Hey everyone, this is Keith Scott from out in Sydney, Australia. I'm one of the voices of Bullwinkle J. Moose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kenny and Andy McPhee.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny and welcome to Relentless and Unstoppable. We have another amazing guest coming on the channel today, so please hit like and subscribe. And after this episode, please stay tuned to the RNU channel for more amazing guests. Let's get this on!
Hey everybody, how you doing? Just a quick little share of why I started Relentless and Unstoppable. It was for one very simple reason, because of Doug Kenny. Nothing to do with me at all, zero. I was just coaching Doug, and he took on the coaching and mentoring, and he made all the changes. He took all the suggestions from his parents as well as my coaching, but it was all about Doug, his breakthrough and his weight loss, his willingness to accept that he is dealing with high functioning autism and other issues, but he's never quit, he's never given up. So we did one interview with him to share his story, and then we decided to start interviewing other people. And Doug has now taken over the whole channel, and he does all the interviews, he runs everything. He's just an amazing young man. So RNU was born from simply what an amazing young man Doug is, and his story needed to be shared.
Yeah, it could be. I saw a couple of those stadium super trucks in Nashville, and I was certainly entertained by it. I saw Robbie Gordon win, and that was something that's not usual for me as far as my journey into racing, because he departed from NASCAR around the time I was getting into it, you know? And so seeing him win was a first for me. And then seeing Robert Stout, the other Robbie in that series, going on to win the second race, that was pretty fun, you know, and I learned that was Robert Stout's first win in the truck series, Stadium Super Trucks, and so I was happy to see that. But then I remember seeing all the drivers coming down the bridge doing burnouts, and I just remember thinking, which of those trucks is the winner? I can't tell.
Yeah, it is. It's unique for sure. I've actually, Robbie Gordon's old shop. I actually went there 2 or 3 years ago and saw the trucks sitting there and how they're put together. And I never knew this about those trucks, and a lot of the fans might not know this. He actually makes every part and piece that goes on those trucks. He machines them and designed them himself with a group of people, and it's pretty impressive what he's accomplished with all that.
Yeah, and he's a very accomplished driver, and one of the few that's been in all forms of racing almost, you know?
Yeah. He even had one of his Indy cars sitting in the shop that he drove. So yeah, he's one of those Kyle Larson, Tony Stewart types where he's been in everything and will race just about anything he can sit in.
Yeah, Kyle Larson is one of my biggest heroes as well. I actually met him at Phoenix Raceway a few years ago. It was awesome meeting up with him, you know, and seeing him win that championship and making that comeback, that made me really happy, you know, hearing about that.
Oh yeah. Kyle's one in a million. He's fun to watch. You can never count him out, no matter what the circumstances are.
Yeah. So, at the end of 2007, you ended up losing your ride, I think, with Robert Yates. I think that was around the time the team shut down. And because of that, Richard Childress came up, I think, with an offer for you to run a part schedule in the Holiday Inn car that I think won the owner's title that year. And then things went downhill from then on. What was that like?
Yeah, you know, I was obviously very appreciative, because Richard reached out to me. I didn't actually have to reach out to Richard when I think once he heard of the situation I was in. I believe it was either late November or early December. I got a call from him saying, "Hey, come drive for me. I'll fund 3 or 4 races for you out of my own pocket, and before the end of the season, I'll find you a sponsor." And he was very adamant about that. Come the end of 2008, like I said, the economy took a hit, and it started getting really, really hard to find sponsors. So the following year in 2009, he gave me a partial schedule with Jeff Burton and Clint Boyer in the 29 Holiday Inn ride. So I split that ride with those two guys. And, I ran well all year, as did Jeff and as did Clint. I think Clint even won one race somewhere. I think it was Dover maybe. And I ran very well. Our average finishes were very close to the same. And I felt like I was doing everything right. Unfortunately, at the end of 2009, we still hadn't found another sponsor, full-time sponsor. And, he had his grandkids coming along. So away I went to find something else. And ever since then, it's just been part-time, not really funded equipment, just, never really had another opportunity and good stuff after that. Everything I've been in since then has just been, teams that struggle to make it to the racetrack, that are just trying to get by. And, you got the second best motors and the second best put together race cars. And not that they don't do great with what they got. I mean, when I raced for Carl Long, he does a great job of putting the best type of car he can on the racetrack for his budget. And we had some really good runs in some places when everything went right. But, personally being as competitive as I am and feeling like I proved what I needed to prove to establish myself and put myself in a position where I would always have a ride if I wanted one. And to not be able to do that when that's all I've ever done my whole life, it's frustrating.
I bet. So for those who don't know, Steven in 2012, after some time out of the sport, got an offer from a team that used to be the Richard Childress 33, although it was now owned by Joe Falk and Mike Hillman, and ran half the season and won Rookie of the Year, and then sort of vanished after that for a bit. So what was that year like, driving for what was a satellite team of Richard Childress and all that?
Yeah, that was a fun year. I enjoyed myself. Joe Falk and them, they called it a satellite RCR team, but it really wasn't. It wasn't a fully funded RCR effort. We did have a couple of RCR chassis, but for most of the time we were running pro motors, which weren't the best motors out there. But that was back when there were no charters, and you had to qualify your way in on speed every week, no matter where you were in points. And I think out of, I want to say 20 races, I think I made all but 2 or 3 of them on speed. And I remember we actually rented an RCR motor just for the Indianapolis 400, the Indy 400, and one other big event somewhere. I can't remember which one it was. I believe it was Charlotte. And we made both those races by like 3/4 of a second. So we had good driving race cars. And when we put a motor in it, they were fast. But the rest of the time we were, just struggling to make the races like everybody else was that was on the same pro motor program like we were. But Joe was a nice guy, and the Hillmans are great. I love all the Hillmans. They're like family. We had a great time that year, all of us. And again, I was appreciative to get an opportunity to do something like that with them. They made it middle of the year when they realized that there was some point fund or Rookie of the Year contingency money at stake. They made it a priority. They didn't have to, but they made it a priority to try to make sure I could have a chance to win that title. And they did all their part to help me do that. And I'll always be thankful for that.
Yeah, for sure. You got to remember that there were more rookies in year than there were the previous years, with when Andy Lally won and then with Kevin Conway. And those years, they only won because the other rookies only ran like 1 or 2 races, and there were several in your year. So yeah, you were a pretty deserving one, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Oh, hey, I appreciate it. Yeah, it was Josh Wise and I were pretty tight there at the end of the year for that point battle. And I think going into I made the Phoenix race, the next to last race of the season. And that finally, I think that either put me ahead or gave me a little bit of a gap on Josh. And then because of that, Josh decided to, instead of going to Homestead, Josh decided to go race something else that weekend. I can't remember what it was, but we were good friends then. And he said, "Yeah, you can have it. I'm going to race something else that weekend. I've given up." Or he said, "I've given up hope, or it's all yours," or something like that. But yeah, we had a good time with it.
I have never heard that before. A race driver purposely giving something up.
Well, it was in a joking manner. I'm sure if we would have been tied or really close in points heading to Homestead, I'm sure they would have given it an effort.
Yeah, I'm willing to believe that story far more than those people that say that Juan Pablo Montoya purposely ran into a jet dryer. Like,
Anyone that thinks that he purposely ran into a jet
yeah,
dryer knows nothing about racing. I can promise you, because it's very obvious something broke on his car, and that sent him into the top, into the truck up there. So anyone that thinks that just has no clue what racing is or how it works.
exactly. I actually had an interaction with Juan about a couple races before he moved over to IndyCar. It was Phoenix in 2013. I actually had an interaction with him. We didn't speak, but I was in front of a crowd, shook his hand, and got an autograph from him on an item, and he gave me a nice smile when I thanked him for it. And so it was nice to see him go out, appreciated by the fans. And I still occasionally talk about it on my social media occasionally, but it's like it gets annoying when I bring it up and the first things people talk about are the jet dryer incident. It's like Juan would purposely nudge you, or he would take the air off you, or even purposefully force you into a mistake that would cost you the win, but he would never intentionally run into a jet dryer. And people who think that are just, I find it laughable. You know what I mean?
Uh, that's the Karens of the world for you, but that's what that is.
Gee, that's all we have for Relentless and Unstoppable. So tune into the next episode to hear more amazing stories from amazing guests. This is Keith Scott from Sydney, Australia, saying so long, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Gee.